So we're live.
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. Hey everybody, welcome to the Lore Lodge official podcast. I'm Aidan Mattis. This is our co-host, editor, producer, jack of all trades, technical Aiden. Today we're going to be talking about Atlantis, Precursor Civilizations, Gobekli Tepe, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff along those lines. I made Aiden do some homework this week.
Correct.
So this should be more of a conversation than we usually have, and less of a lecture.
I would hope so. I would hope.
I mean, to start off, a lot of people's first experience with Atlantis was probably it was DreamWorks, right? The DreamWorks movie from like early 2000s.
Which one?
The DreamWorks Atlantis movie.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it, but I recall it existing.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a little bit younger, you might remember the SpongeBob Atlantis episode, which was a trip and a half. But, to kind of get things started, just redo our usual introductions. Again, I'm Aidan Mattis. I am a master's student at Bangor University. I am getting my PhD in medieval studies so that I can go on to teach younger people about the Middle Ages. I'm also a lore and history man on the TikTok. And you can find me at the Aidan Mattis on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, basically every different type of social media. And what about you, Aiden? You want to introduce yourself again?
Sure. So my name is Aidan Thornberry. I attended New York University for a major in film and journalism with a minor in psych. I have written a script I'm currently working on selling. I am also part-time working on a farm, and I have a lot of interests that I just try to explore through creativity. And I'm also vaguely dying right now, so excuse the way my voice sounds.
Yeah, he has probably not the Rona.
Let's hope not.
Probably
I am fully
not the Rona.
vaccinated, so
Yeah. We're both fully vaccinated on this show. I got all 4 vaccines.
we actually got our vaccine together.
Yeah. I got
Because we do everything together.
Pfizer and Moderna and also J&J and AstraZeneca.
Yep.
I got one of each. I figured that was the best way to do it.
There was one that was called PB&J, but that may have just been... I got it from a guy.
Vaccine.
I got it from a guy on Market Street in Philly. It may have just been...
I got vaccinated under an underpass on 422.
Which exit?
Trooper.
I think you might be safe.
Okay. Yeah.
If you had said anything like near past Limerick, you would have had a problem.
Oh yeah, that would have been an issue. For the sake of the YouTube algorithms and overlords, we are not giving vaccine advice. We're just making jokes. I just want to make sure that we don't get taken down and demonetized, because that would not be fun. But yeah, Atlantis. We should actually talk about what we're going to talk about.
That's always a good plan.
So again, the story of Atlantis for a lot of people is just a fun story of, this ancient civilization that supposedly the Greeks believed existed, and then it sank beneath the waves in this, great tragedy and great disaster. It is essentially the Greek flood myth. And as we know, many civilizations have flood myths. Almost all civilizations have flood myths. This one in particular, however, intersects with some recent geologic finds that make it very interesting. And I'll just kind of go over the basic story here with Atlantis. Essentially, it's Plato writes in Critias. I don't.
You would know it better.
I have no idea how to pronounce Greek. Critias.
It's a shame my friend Chris isn't here because he's.
Yeah.
I don't know how much Greek he knows, but he knows a good amount of Greek.
Yeah, it would be better. But anyway, as well as Timaeus, he talks about it. About how Atlantis was a city that is described by Solon of Athens, who was a great lawmaker, a great Athenian leader, one of the original, not founders of the city, but kind of founding fathers of Athenian democracy. And Solon went on a trip to Egypt, and the Egyptians told him about the story of a city called Atlantis and how it was this great civilization with advanced technology. And again, we got to be kind of loose with the terms here because advanced technology to the Greeks would have been, combustion engines.
Yeah, we'll go with the idea of advanced technology.
It was more advanced than what
of
the
situation
Athenians
was
had
at the time.
Yeah. But yeah, so he goes to Egypt, and they tell him of the city of Atlantis and how it had all this advanced technology, and because they did not wear their advancement, what was the exact terminology used?
I don't recall.
It was something along the lines of they didn't wear their success with moderation. The universe struck them down and sunk them beneath the waves. And when Solon asked when this happened, the Egyptians told him 9,000 years ago. And this was in about 600 BC. So 9,000 years before 600 BC would be about 11,600 years ago. Yep. And 11,600 years ago, it just turns out, was the end of a period known as the Younger Dryas, where the Earth experienced cataclysmic glacial meltdowns, and the sea level rose considerably and most likely buried a lot of coastal civilizations and riverside civilizations, which would, at the time, probably have been almost everything. And then a few other interesting things pop up. But what's really incredible about that is that writing in the 400s BC, Plato successfully pinned almost the exact date of the sinking of Atlantis as the end of the Younger Dryas period. So either he was the best bullshitter to ever bullshit, or Solon and Plato and maybe even the Egyptians actually knew something about this flood, which just happens to be mentioned in Genesis and in Gilgamesh and in pretty much everything. I mean, depending on how you look at even the prophecy of Ragnarok, in Norse mythology, the world is the great fire that Surtur sets at the end of Ragnarok is extinguished by a flood. So it really doesn't matter where you look. There's a flood. And
oh, you know what?
What?
Just thinking about some of the Graham Hancock you had me listen to, the great
Gotta love Graham Hancock.
The great fire being extinguished by a flood, considering his theory is based on the idea that a large comet or broken up comet was what caused it. Mm-hmm. That comet impact could have been the fire.
Do you want to explain the comet?
You probably know it better than I do. All right, so essentially,
I'll correct you if I have to.
All right, so essentially, from everything all the research I did, which was very minimal in comparison to the amount that he has done himself, essentially, there's evidence under the ice in Greenland, which is kind of the big place in which they're founding this theory. Essentially, there were ideas that this theory existed prior to, but this was the first really big founding of evidence that has supported it and kind of caused the scientific community to give it some validity. And essentially, the idea is that just prior to this time of the Younger Dryas, a large amount of iron and other like metallic elements are found within the soil layers of around, what is it, 1140?
About 12,800 years ago.
12,800 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was suspected, I guess, essentially, you could say, that a large comet and or a broken up comet impacted with the Earth and then caused this period called the Younger Dryas.
At least 8 pieces of the comet made contact with the Earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this finding under the Greenland ice sheet is a massive crater that is essentially determined to have been created around that period of time. So it gives a lot of credence to this theory of...
I will say geologists do disagree on exactly when the comet hit.
Yeah.
Some date it as far back as 70,000 years. Some date it as recently as 11,000 years. But...
Yeah. So essentially this is the genesis of the theory of... Well, not necessarily the theory of the Younger Dryas, but kind of the... I don't know, what would you signify that as? How would you define that?
What do you mean?
I mean, because the Younger Dryas wasn't really... It's
a geologic time period.
Yeah. It's not. I was going to say, it's not a theory.
Yeah, no, it's just a time period, but it's the effects of the Younger Dryas, the effects they had on civilization as a whole, and kind of where it fits in. And if you read exactly what Plato says, what he's talking about is how Atlantis was very advanced, and they became very strong, very powerful. They had the ability to project power across the world. When we say the world, we're probably talking about the Mediterranean. Yeah. But they had the ability to project power across the world. And as a result, whether it's the gods or the universe, however you want to refer to it, they were punished with this flood. And that sounds extraordinarily familiar to the book of Genesis and the way the flood is described there, albeit earlier in Hebrew, but, you know, I'll read that. Let's see if I can actually find exactly where I want it to be. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts in his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on this earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. This comes directly after we learn about the mighty men born of the unions of the sons of God and the daughters of men, who are these very powerful individuals. And if you look at it, it kind of would make sense that who Moses could have been talking about when Genesis was written was the Nephilim and Atlantis and all of that. I'm not saying that they're all exactly the same thing. It's just shocking how those two stories, the reasoning behind the fall of the civilization before the flood, the antediluvian civilization or civilizations, is the same. It is in both cases hubris and wickedness and all of that, just society being wrong, society being evil, and God saying, all right, to hell with it, let's try this again, basically. And aside from just Atlantis being an interesting concept in terms of Plato getting it right with the timescale, immediately after this, we get the foundation of Gobekli Tepe. And Gobekli Tepe is a megalithic site in Turkey. We're not entirely sure what it was used for, but there's evidence of brewing. There's evidence of people living there, of worship. Basically, it appears to be a town. And it springs up 11,600 years ago, which is 7,000 years before Samaria, which is what we typically think of as the first civilization, which was in the Tigris and the Euphrates in Mesopotamia. So 7,000 years before Samaria, back when humanity's, the extent of our agriculture was maybe a small field of berries here and there. In the middle of the Anatolian plains, you have a megalithic site with stone building blocks weighing up to 50 tons that just appears at 11,600. Nothing was built before it, and nothing was really built after it in that area for thousands of years. And the people in that area, as far as we know, were using stone tools. They were Neolithic people, and they were hunter-gatherers, and they might have, huts and yurts made of animal skins and wood, but they did not have stone buildings. So what it appears to be when you look at Gobekli Tepe and the timing of Atlantis sinking, you got to remember Atlantis is supposedly a city by the sea, or in the sea, an island. The rational explanation is that survivors of Atlantis, whether they be people who were in Atlantis and escaped on boats, or people who were a colony, or, if you want to get really conspiratorial about it and look into some of the other things we've talked about on this channel, like pocket dimensions and fairy mounds and things like that, maybe people who knew how to use them to transfer themselves across the world. What it appears to be is that some people from this precursor antediluvian civilization made their way to Anatolia, built Gobekli Tepe, and then for whatever reason, be it that the population wasn't high enough to sustain themselves, or there was warring with the various hunter-gatherer peoples, they failed to take root. And that would probably, in that case, be the last gasp of whatever this civilization was. And what seems likely, based on some of the other things we know, for example, that the Americas appear to only have been inhabited for the last 13,000 years, North America at least. But we've found human artifacts in the Americas that are much older than that. So who was populating America before what we now know as Native Americans, First Nations peoples? Was it a precursor civilization? Is that why we have all of these megalithic structures that can't possibly have been built with the technology of the time, that we currently arguably don't have the technology to fuse stone the way they did? Mm-hmm. There are so many possibilities to it, but the definitely the strangest one is that one connection between, or not that one connection, but that series of events that you have. Atlantis, you have the Younger Dryas period. This comet hits the Earth. We have massive flooding. Atlantis supposedly falls in 11,600. Göbekli Tepe is built in 11,600. There's nothing around it. And then we don't see civilization again for 7,000 years until about 4,500 BC with the Sumerians. And then what do you get with the Sumerians? Well, you get some of the first written word that we know of in human history. We get the first literature in human history, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which Gilgamesh at one point travels west out of Sumeria to go meet Utnapishtim to find the secret to everlasting life. And Utnapishtim, who lives across the Sea of Death to the west of Mesopotamia, survived the Great Flood. It is uncanny, considering that a lot of these stories come from areas that are not, these aren't all Indo-European. We're not seeing, in a lot of these cases, like with Celtic and Norse and Greek mythology, these are all Indo-European. But the Greeks are Indo-European. The Sumerians probably weren't. So there's some very interesting tie-ins here, and it just makes, it's getting less and less questionable of, was there a flood? It's not even really when was there a flood. It's now what was there before the flood.
Yeah.
And the answer seems to be a civilization that was capable of creating megalithic structures, the likes of which we have not seen since. So what could possibly have happened? Were these people, were they human? Is the reason that not Atlantis, but that Göbekli Tepe, whoever inhabited it, was it that it was such a small population of these exceptional men that we hear about in the Bible, like was Atlantis made up of Nephilim? Was the reason that Göbekli Tepe went into decline that there were only a few dozen survivors and they mixed in with the local population, and over time the genes just spread out too much and they just became normal people again? What could possibly have happened to get us to this point where we lost for 7,000 years the ability to even have sustained settlements? What do you think?
It's a great question. I mean, now, just to give context, because I don't think we have given it. We mentioned the catalyst to the Younger Dryas, but for those watching, what exactly was the Younger Dryas?
I mean, very simplistically, it was a period where the Earth's temperature warmed drastically over 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. It was the end of the last ice age, the end of the Pleistocene. The period we're in right now is the Holocene, and that begins about 10,000 BC, 10,000 years ago. So 12,000 years ago. And that's the Holocene period. That is what we live in now. Prior to that, you have the Younger Dryas, and then before that, you have the Pleistocene. Pleistocene being the last ice age. So basically, you went from the Earth being very, very cold, lots and lots of large mammals, humans likely being unable in many cases to put together sustained agriculture just because of how harsh the climate was.
At least anywhere away from the equator.
Anywhere away from the equator. And then after the Younger Dryas, we have the sea levels rise, but the Earth also gets considerably warmer, which allows for humans to have agriculture in more places, which expands the kind of those golden zones around the equator to, up into southern Europe and down to where the Sahara kind of begins. So yeah, basically you had a massive shift from the livable world, the settleable world being, maybe from, I'm trying to think, I don't know my latitudes very well, but from, France to kind of like, I guess the Congo in terms of latitude.
Yeah.
You have it expand from basically a belt within a few thousand miles of the center of the equator. You have it expand from that to being almost the entire planet. You can farm pretty much up until you get into the Arctic Circle. And there are periods of human history after the Younger Dryas where it did get even warmer.
Yeah.
People like to think that right now we're in this extreme period of global warming, but we had similar temperatures in the medieval climactic optimum in Europe, where you could grow non-hybrid grapes in Sweden around the year 1000 AD. Which you can't do today.
Yeah.
You cannot do that today. Similarly, during the height of the Roman Empire, it was the same kind of thing. It was very hot, and what we often see, especially in European history, because Europe's just had some of the highest population density of the entire world throughout history, and some of the most varying climate because of where it is. With the climactic optimums, what you see is, for example, around the fall of the Western Roman Empire, around the year 400, it started to get cold, and it got really cold. And that combined with a lot of war and the famine caused by it being so cold, drove a lot of the Germanic people south and west, and that's kind of what was one of the things that caused the fall of the Roman Empire. Was they had all this internal turmoil, and they were having problems with famine and inflation and all that, and then just the pressure of all this Germanic migration just crushed the empire. So it kept getting colder, and then it steadied out around 500, and it stayed cold until about the 800s. And in the 800s, it started to warm back up. And then around 1000 AD, you hit the medieval climactic optimum, and it is about the warmest it's been in 1,000 years. The population booms.
Now, just for some context, what exactly was the temperature around that time?
During the 100 Years' War, there was the Battle of, I think, Poitiers. It was 96 degrees Fahrenheit.
And that's about what latitude?
That's in northern France.
Okay.
So it was hot. That's also the,
And what time of year was that, do you know?
But that's also the 1300s. But the 1300s.
That wasn't too long before the Little Ice Age, right?
Exactly. So it's what we can kind of expect is that in turn it was probably about what it is now.
Okay.
The climate was probably similar to the climate we have now in the High Middle Ages. And then after the High Middle Ages, we hit the Little Ice Age. We get the Black Plague. We get famine all over the place. The population of Europe declines by 33 to 50%, depending on where you are. It's just because previously the population had quadrupled. Between 800 and 1,000, the European population quadrupled, which is insane in any population. It's only really matched by what's happened over the last 150 years after the Industrial Revolution. And then you hit the Black Plague, the Little Ice Age. It gets colder, people die, and you get set back a bunch.
Yep.
So
give us an idea. So essentially, for anybody who's just joining us now, because I'm seeing some people in chat are saying, so we are talking about the Younger Dryas, its catalyst, and kind of its effects on prehistoric societies and civilizations, and how it has influenced our perceptions of what human history was, is, and in terms will be, in the sense of what we're going to uncover in the future that might change our understanding and perception about how human civilization actually developed throughout the course of planetary history.
Yep.
So we know that the Younger Dryas was the period of global warming, essentially, right after, what was that ice age called?
That was the Pleistocene period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there like a layman's term for that ice age?
The Ice Age.
The Ice Age. Okay, so
That was the big one.
got it. So that's the Ice Age that, when people talk about the Ice Age or whatever.
That is the
what
one
it
they're
was.
talking about.
Got it. So what was before the Ice Age? How long was the Pleistocene era?
You're getting deep into geology, which is not my chosen field.
I can give a little bit of context just because I was watching some Graham Hancock. So from what I just heard recently, it was essentially along the lines of, in that period of time of the Younger Dryas, I think it was the Younger Dryas, that the land bridge between current modern Russia and Alaska was.
Mm-hmm. The Bering Strait.
Yeah, so apparently that existed about 170 to 120, or it might have been 140 to 120,000 years ago. So that was the last time supposedly that existed. And
it's the Pliocene that preceded the Pleistocene.
Got it. And so when did the Pliocene go up until?
The Pliocene was about until 2.5 million years ago.
Okay. And then that ended about when?
11,700 years ago.
Okay. So
the Pleistocene ended 11,700 years ago.
Got it. And that's where the Younger Dryas. Yes. So, different theories or whatever. But essentially,
chronologically, these periods get much shorter over time too.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You're talking like millions and millions and millions, down to like a couple million years, down to 10,000 years.
Which that in and of itself is interesting.
Well, a lot of it's put in the perspective of humans.
No, for sure, but just the fact that like there were long-term climatary and geological eras, and as you approach the modern age, those eras seem to get shorter and shorter. So I'm obviously a large portion of that is because we don't have as much detail and information further back. So we can't say exactly the fine differences between like
To put it simply, you and I are not geologists.
Correct. Yeah. We are. I am very much out of my own depth.
I'm a historian.
Yes, I do this. So
yeah, but no, it's so yeah. The Pleistocene is the Ice Age we talk about. That's the period of giant mammals, woolly mammoths, things like that. And then the Younger Dryas is kind of that in-between period where everything gets a lot warmer, and then the Holocene is where we currently live. That's where you see the dawn of human civilization. Human beings, of course, having existed during the Pleistocene. Up to 40,000 years ago, we start to see large populations of Homo sapiens entering Europe. But 10,000 years ago is where we start to see the beginnings of human civilization, of settled society. But even then, it's still just small villages.
Yeah.
Except for Gobekli Tepe.
Well, and then, so something that Graham Hancock was talking about in the thing I was watching is that in Brazil, in the Amazon, apparently there were vast cities that once existed that when smallpox was introduced in the 1500s kind of wiped everything out. And we're only kind of really rediscovering that these things exist because the forest is being torn down for farming and things like that. And we're finding evidence of these massive civilizations that existed that outsized a lot of European cities at the time. And, there's evidence of North American, inhabitants that were that were there long before they were supposed to be there.
Yeah, I mean, there's evidence of humans in North America 50,000 years ago.
Yeah.
30,000 years ago for sure.
Yeah.
And then something happened. I cannot for the life of me remember what the civilization was called. Not civilization, but what the culture was called. I feel like it was, I know it starts with a C.
Look it up.
Yeah, that's a good point. But, what we have accepted now is that the people we know as Native American today arrived around 13,000 years ago. Or 13,000 BC. I can't remember exactly which one it is off the top of my head right now. Again, I'm a medieval historian. But there appears to have been a period where there were people in the continental, what is the United States and Canada and Mexico, and then they disappeared. They were gone. And when did they disappear? Well, they weren't there at the end of the Younger Dryas. So was it the Younger Dryas that caused them to leave? Did they die out? what happened. We don't know. What we know is after the Younger Dryas, there were people there, and they may have been seriously technologically disadvantaged compared to the previous ones. There's what this all kind of it's how it all ties together that fascinates me. That we have Atlantis, that we have Gobekli Tepe, that we have the Epic of Gilgamesh, that we have the Nephilim in the Bible, and just everywhere, all of these things that tie in to a race of people who were technologically advanced, who were smarter, who were better, and then they got wiped out by a natural disaster. And it took us years to get back to it. And a lot of people say aliens. I don't think it's aliens. I am hardcore on the train that this was not aliens. And a lot of people will look at some of the old descriptions of, spacecraft and things like that in Mayan architecture and art and say, oh, well, that's clearly a spaceman. But, why does the spaceman look exactly how a spaceman in 1969 looked? Why do we think that it perplexes me, because with the aliens theory, it seems to be that people want to believe it was aliens and they will seek to find anything they can. I think it's much more likely, if you look at the descriptions of, for example, angels as golden rotating wheels full of eyes, that if you said, hey, draw me glowing rotating wheels full of eyes, you'd probably get something that looks like a UFO. I think that's more likely, that we're dealing with something multidimensional than we're dealing with something from outer space. There's also the Fermi paradox. If there's the Fermi equation, which is that I forget the exact numbers involved, but basically there's this many planets and this many star systems and this many galaxies throughout the universe. This many of them could sustain life. They've been around this long. Therefore, if alien life existed, it would have contacted us, or we would have contacted it.
See, here's my thing, is I have a tendency to disagree, because I've heard that argument before, and I have a tendency to disagree with it because it's assuming that there's a finite number. And our understanding of the universe is that not only is it expanding, but it's infinite. And obviously there's,
Well, that's the thing, is that it's at least that many.
But here's my thing, is that it's difficult for me to agree with the assumption that A, people would want to contact us. B, when you think about the human history, and not even necessarily the human history, but Earth's history, the planetary history, we've gone through how many mass extinctions? 5 now? We're in the 6th currently?
Of humans or the planet?
The planet.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Yeah. So I think we're in the 6th. Imagine a planet that has not had any mass extinctions. They've had no major cataclysmic events. Obviously, this is, theoretical at its core, but imagine how much more advanced they could be. But the thing is that they could be so far away that even if they were so advanced to the point of having a civilization for billions of years, assuming the best case scenario, there's no way that we could know that they would even ever be able to find a way to get here within any period of time that would be livable or understandable.
Well, that's the idea behind Fermi's equation, is that he took that into account. How far away would they need to be? How many planets? Point is, it seems, even what you just said, if we haven't been contacted yet, it's probably because either A, we're alone, or B, they're too far away, which means it couldn't have been aliens that built Gobekli Tepe.
Exactly. I'm only saying that I disagree with the idea that we would have had contact by now, because I think that's a bit of a stretch, to say the least.
Fair enough.
By the way, really quickly before we continue on, I do want to give 2 quick shout outs. One for Derek Herman for super chatting $4.99.
Oh, thank you
very much, Derek. And
was
then
there a question to it, or
no?
It was just a
super chat. But there was a $5 super chat from Commander Canada 213 that was a question. my question to you is, do we want to start answering questions now, even if they are super chats, or do we want to hold those
Let's
off?
hold it until 8.
Okay, so
hold it until
just
8.
so you guys know, we do start taking questions at 8 for the last half hour of the show. Super chats get priority. So Commander Canada 213,
you will be the first question.
So I will keep that up there, and we will start taking those in about 20 minutes. But anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, sure. So what you're going to hear for probably the next 20 minutes is going to be a lot of, how do I put this? Conjecture, and a lot of it has to do with the plot of a film that I wrote that has not yet sold, but has to do with the Younger Dryas period and kind of what sort of technologies we'd be looking at, because from what we can tell, it doesn't seem like we're looking at something that was a spacefaring civilization. We're not looking at something that was, doing Elon Musk style stuff. When we say advanced, it's not that they had better or worse technology. It seems like they had different technology. Because, and the one that gets me is how'd they get from, if you look at where Atlantis, so if Plato got the time frame of the sinking of Atlantis right, there's a good chance he got the location of Atlantis right as well, which is out past the Pillars of Heracles, which is right just into the Atlantic Ocean past Gibraltar. I too am dying.
At least we're dying together.
Yeah. As it was meant to be. Always. So if that's where Atlantis was, and it sank, how did they get from there to the center of Anatolia? Turkey, for those of you who don't know what Anatolia is. My suggestion has been that they went through the Earth or through another dimension.
Explain.
Because as I said about the Tua de Danann, I think that they come from, I think they're Nephilim. I think many things are Nephilim. It's getting to a point where if I can't explain something rationally, I've just started saying it's Nephilim.
So kind of like the Ancient Aliens guy, instead of your default being
Nephilim.
aliens, it's just
yeah. But so let's say the technology they had was rather that the reason we don't find evidence of cars and planes and boats and things like that from that time period is that they didn't need to use those things to travel great distances. That if they wanted to travel from Iberia to Anatolia, they could do it by accessing whatever the other dimension is that we look at, whatever kind of parallel dimension there is that exists alongside this one that the Tua de Danann used to travel between, and that in Judeo-Christian lore, there's angels are all around us, but we can't see them. Is it because they're invisible to us, or is it because they're in a dimension that exists side by side with ours? In Norse mythology, you've got how Jotunheim and Midgard have places where it's possible they believed they intersected, so that they were two different realms, two different dimensions, but you could be in both at once. Is it possible that these ancient people mastered a way to build gateways where they had the technology that we no longer have to go through a gate in Gibraltar and come out a gate in Anatolia? And obviously there's so much there to deconstruct, to unpack about how that would even be possible, if it would be possible. But again, technology that is sufficiently advanced would appear as magic to those who do not have it. Philip K. Dick.
This would be a good opportunity for us to try and find a physicist that we could get on the show to try and help break down this theory in the sense of deciding whether or not it's even theoretically possible in the realm of theoretical physicists.
Yeah, well, I mean, theoretical physicists are suggesting that there is a parallel dimension in which time moves backwards, and they've detected this because of particles having the wrong redshift, basically having blue shift, and so the particles appear to be moving backwards in time.
And for people who don't innately know what that is, that breaks down atoms beyond their beyond the normal levels in which people look at them, all the way down to the quarks. And blue shifts and red shifts are elements of quarks and how they.
Yeah, it's essentially on the light spectrum. If something is heading towards you, it appears more red. If it's heading away from you, it appears more blue. Is the simple terminology of it. And usually you can't detect that, but with very, very precise instruments, you can. And they claim that they have detected quarks and particles moving the wrong way in time. And somehow, I mean, again, I have no idea what is going on with that. I am not a physicist, but my point is that it's not outside the realm of possibility. And, you know, getting back into kind of where I nut out with it in my field, it is not accepted by academics and historians that Atlantis existed. It is not accepted that Gobekli Tepe was the creation of a surviving group of people from a precursor civilization. And whether we're talking about a precursor race that was more advanced than humans, or we're talking about Nephilim, or we're talking about humans who were gifted some sort of technology by a divine presence, it doesn't matter. Mainstream scholarly discussion does not center around this. It will get you laughed out of academic circles to bring it up. And I think that's weird, because there is no mainstream explanation for Gobekli Tepe. If Gobekli Tepe was 4,000 years later, we might be able to make an argument that, oh, maybe we're wrong about Sumer. But we're talking about 7,000 years. And we're talking about something that appeared directly after the Younger Dryas, directly after the fall of Atlantis. You know, things that just, there's a point at which, like, I can accept maybe 2 or 3 coincidences. We're not talking about coincidences at this point. We're talking about things that just correlate. You know, it's too close. It is too close to have, you know, all of these different stories that interweave into one narrative that actually makes sense. Because if you look at Gobekli Tepe, it doesn't make sense. If you look at Atlantis, it doesn't make sense. If you look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, it doesn't make sense. If you look at Noah's Ark, it doesn't make sense. If you look at the story of the Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, it doesn't make sense. Ragnarok doesn't make sense. Take them all apart. They have no feasible, rational explanation for any of them happening. But if you put them all together, you actually kind of get a puzzle that fits together. If you take a comet crashing into the Earth, setting the world on fire, essentially, and that being succeeded by a flood, which left only a few humans alive, who in many cases were being guided by groups of surviving Nephilim, who were elevated in human culture to the status of gods. That could explain it. That could explain a lot of this. If Atlantis was if you know, the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men and bore children with them, it would make sense that that you would have, in some cases, those people would take command of civilizations and lead them against one another. But it would also make sense that they might go, you know what, we don't want to live with these people. They're below us. They're beneath us. We want to go have our own place, and that they would go and build their own city from whence they could project power, install leaders over men, and then eventually this would be destroyed by the flood, and its survivors would become what we know today as, you know, gods and elves and all of those things in mythology and in culture. So the more you dig into the Nephilim theory, the more it starts to make sense, in my opinion. The more it becomes, you know, something that we should be investigating rather than discounting, and rather than trying to disprove, we should be trying to prove it. But instead, it seems that governments and academia and religious leaders don't want that. And I have to wonder why. Why do institutions fight so hard to stop us from understanding? Like, what is it about, you know, if we were to completely excavate Gobekli Tepe and find a very obvious ceremonial portal, like we found in, the American Southwest and in Mexico. There are these basically giant doorways in stone that have like a keyhole in the center, basically, is what it looks like. It looks like it's been eroded for thousands of years. But we'll find doorways in stone that are far too big for human beings to use, that we can't see any way to open them. They go directly into rock, and there's no explanation for why they're there. All we have is, they must have been part of some ancient religious practice, and we leave it at that. Like, yeah, I get it. There's no evidence to go off of after that. There's no way to prove it. But instead of looking at every single culture on Earth in a lens of like, we have the Native Americans and we have the Europeans and we have the Asians, and they all did the different. What if we look at it and we say, what are the cultural similarities? What do we all have in common? What did our ancestors know that we don't? What was lost in that period where we didn't know how to write? Like, what happened? But we won't do it. But that's my question is, say we do excavate Gobekli Tepe. Say we find that ceremonial doorway. What happens that they are so afraid of? Because can you imagine the sheer significance of finding a technology that allows us to travel between distances of thousands and thousands of miles in the blink of an eye without using any energy, simply by accessing a secondary dimension, by creating a wrinkle in space-time, which is likely, if you think about it, what we're looking at here. And we know that you can warp space-time, or we theorize that you can warp space-time.
Yeah. Hasn't yet been physically done.
Yeah, but we theoretically believe you can do it. It's been in all sorts of science fiction. So if you can do it in space, you can probably also do it on Earth.
There are some tangible pieces of evidence within the Large Hadron Collider tests that they've done with particle acceleration that suggest that essentially space-time warping is possible, and that there are some other theories from people like Stephen Hawking and things like that where, in in his analysis and lifelong study of black holes and things like that, space-time warping is essentially what exists around the singularity of a black hole, and that has been essentially the moment that we understood and found the event horizon of a black hole and why it was appearing the way it did in images. That was the first real concrete signification of like, okay, this is a warping of space-time due to just pure gravity. It exists. It's just a matter of how else can it be done.
Exactly. So if we look at that, spot on. Like, I'm glad you said all that, because that's way more science than I would ever have been able to put into one sentence. But yeah, the implication of being able to warp space-time on Earth without causing some sort of massive, disaster, just being able to walk through a wall in Turkey and be in Spain, it would cut emissions by... there would be no need for air travel ever again.
There wouldn't be any need for any form of travel other than if you were to walk down the street.
Yeah, going town to town.
Yeah.
Of course, it probably wouldn't put the automobile industry completely out of business, but it would. Is that what it is? Is the oil industry so threatened by the possibility that we might, in a few thousand years, learn how to warp space-time on Earth, that we're currently rejecting that science?
No, here's a bigger question in my mind. So I like to side on the potential of assuming ignorance rather than assuming knowledge and malintent.
With individuals, I would agree when it comes to the government and the oil industry.
I think, but a good...
Like, for example, why, but I understand where you're coming from, but think about this. The green energy lobby, the environmentalists and everything. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example, very pro-Green New Deal, wants to end climate change, thinks that if we don't all stop eating meat in the next 7 minutes, then the entire Earth will combust into a ball of flames. Anti-nuclear energy.
Yep.
Even though, with what we have theorized and are simply working on getting to work, there's not enough funding behind it, basically. Mm-hmm. Thorium salt reactors can produce massive amounts of energy with almost no waste, and they can do it extremely efficiently in small reactors. There is no reason not to research that. And they can't be weaponized.
And the safety of reactor technology has vastly improved over the past half a century.
Yeah. So, but instead, they're pushing us, it's basically a battle between the oil industry and all the green climate people who are like, the oil industry is saying, oh, no, we don't need to get off of oil. In fact, we just found more. Like, we learned how to synthesize it. Carbon emissions are not a problem. We don't need to worry about that. And then the green industry, which is like, no, we need to have windmills literally everywhere. You should have them on your shoulders. Like, we need to cut down swaths of forest to replace it with solar farms to save the environment. So both sides should arguably be looking at nuclear energy and going, if what we're looking at here is not malice, it's too obvious to be ignorance. I mean, if somebody's holding up a sign to you that says 1 + 1 = 2, and you look at it and you go, I don't know, like, well, are we sure that one of those is a 1? Are you ignorant, or are you missing the point on purpose?
I think there's an interesting delineation that you have to make there, and this is where my interest in psychology comes in. People are very susceptible to confirmation bias, and not only that, but it's also along the lines of, confirmation bias can come into effect immediately in the sense of a lot of people could look at that sign and read 1+ and just stop reading because they're like, no, I know where you're going with this. I don't believe that. I'm not even going to pay attention to the rest of it. It happens all the time on so many different areas. So, like, they're definitely, I'm not dismissing the idea of
This
malice.
is why the Nephilim built Atlantis. They didn't want to deal with this conversation. They were like 1 + 1 = 2, man. Just get through your head.
Wish I could join them because
I don't think so. They're all dead.
Yeah, but do we know that?
The Windy Boys.
But I mean, well, actually, this is an interesting idea, and this is something we could talk about another time if we want to go in a longer conversation about it. But
did I just talk about nuclear energy and Wendigos in a succinct and concise manner? Yes, I did.
You did. I'm very proud of you.
I am quite a man.
You are a Renaissance man, some may say. Yes. Wait, was that me making a very poor attempt at making a medieval history historian
it wasn't
joke?
Poor. It was a good joke.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyway, nonetheless, we're making the assumption that the Nephilim are totally gone, just based off of these stories of history. But we know that people, those in power distort reality for their own gain plenty. There's no reason we can't believe that. Especially,
Barack Obama is a Nephilim.
See, okay. Did you hear that? So we just got a notification of another subscriber, and that happened literally right after you said that in these headphones, so that was fantastic. Anyway, but I mean, think about it. We discussed those pocket dimension things, and specifically in terms of Norse mythology of people going into these different, realms. Celtic mythology, sorry. Who's to say that just because something says something, in terms of
where are you going with this?
That who's to say that is definitively what happened, especially considering the fact that a lot of the things in terms of historical evidence outside of myth used to claim that history started at X, way after the Younger Dryas. And now, given all of this new information that we're finding, we're realizing that no, that's probably not the case.
Yep.
So, just in a tangential idea or mentality, who's to say that the Nephilim are totally gone if they exist?
Dun dun dun.
We're gonna find them.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean, it's probably worth mentioning. Now,
yes,
we should talk about in not next weekend, but the following. We are going to be heading up to the Adirondacks to... I told you about this.
I thought it was late August.
No, it's early August.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's the date?
30th of July through the 1st of August.
Okay. Should be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't, I can go. I just will have nobody to film. Which
I know,
make it difficult.
but I want to go.
Okay. Point is, how would it be late August? I'm going to Wales.
I know.
Anyway, for those of you that know us from TikTok, you probably also know a girl named Destiny. I think she goes by Destiny Renee. She works at a cabin at a farm up in the Adirondacks, and she has been posting about some weird supernatural occurrences, some knocking on the door that happens at 11 p.m. every night, some screams and weird calls from the forest late at night, tapping on the windows, other such things, strange things like appearing on her front porch, stuff that implies something's out there with her. She was a little freaked out by it. It seems like she's come to grips with it, but I reached out and said, hey, we would love to come up and kind of document some of this and see if maybe it's, or are you actually dealing with something? And that way she can not have to worry about it as much. We can go up and we can set up our recording equipment and just be, prepared to kind of, document this occurrence should it actually happen. So we're going to be dealing up to do that in about 2 weeks. A lot of it's going to be probably on TikTok, just from us recording stuff while we're there. But then also we're going to do some longer footage for YouTube and, hopefully get some confirmation of some stuff.
If it is a fleshy boy,
we're going to violate it.
Yes.
Sexually.
Exactly.
We're going to call that one guy from TikTok who wants to sexually violate the...
Yeah. So aside from bringing what we plan to bring, plus a blue snow shovel, to
Chad, if you're out there, if you want to
come, should we consider?
We will discuss exact supplies off the air.
Yes, but I'm considering. Should we create our own version of something that Muskie Boy sold for a period of time?
Should just reach out. If anybody's got one of Elon Musk's flamethrowers, we would like one of them.
Please.
I know it's not technically a flamethrower. I think it's technically classified as like a lighter.
Yeah.
But if anyone's got one, they want to lend us.
Yeah.
We'll protect ourselves.
Yes,
also some white ash and sage and all that good Native American stuff that is supposed to help.
And just so you guys know, at least if I'm able to go, which hopefully I will, I don't see reason why I shouldn't be able to, we'll be going outside.
Oh, yes.
We do not recommend other people do it, but at this point we are professionals. And
we will be going outside.
If there is a fleshy boy there, we're going after it. I'm going after it.
We're going to try and document it.
I'm going after it.
Oh, God. I hope for his sake there isn't one.
Oh,
this show is going to be really hard to do without an editor.
That fleshy boy's going to learn what it means to screw with the Aidens, I'll tell you what. But yes.
Oh boy, we should switch to super chats.
Yes. So it is 8:03, so it is time for y'all to begin submitting questions.
What did Commander Canada ask?
Yes, so just as a reminder, super chats always get priority. We only go for another half hour or so. So to scroll back up to see what Commander Canada asked, and if you asked your question prior, just re-ask it because it's going to be hard to go all the way back and find it. So this one's easy because it's a super chat. Okay, this is a fun one, and I guess it's something we could also find out firsthand when we go chasing after fleshy boys.
Oh no.
Commander Canada 213 asks, is it possible to get a fleshy girl as a girlfriend because I'm down?
No.
Now, when you
and it's not because it would not be a sexual thing. It's that these don't. There theoretically can be both male and female Wendigos, but their only concern is eating you. Well, they have no other. There is nothing else. Maybe, and no, there are no euphemisms here.
No. I'm just gonna say maybe they just haven't found their type yet.
No. Please. Do not try to mate with the flesh pedestrian.
That's
and
probably
if you do, wear protection, because I don't want to know what comes out of that.
Let's be fair. Looking at the history, a Nephilim mating with something it shouldn't have is probably what caused the flesh pedestrians.
Yes,
so
we
don't
want
create
more.
an abomination just because you're curious. It's not a good plan.
Okay.
Curiosity does sometimes, in fact, kill the cat. And in this case, you are the cat. Don't become the cat. Whether it's that or Schrodinger's. It's just either option is not good. Anyway.
Schrodinger's Wendigo.
Now we're getting into some spicy territory. Okay, next question is from Crovian class. Serious question, in parenthesis. Would it be theoretically possible to kill a fleshy boy using something like a phaser from Star Trek? Meme question, how much meth would it take to OD a fleshy boy? So there were two questions there.
You guys are really trying me.
I can answer if you'd like.
Well, the first question was phaser. I don't know how phaser technology in Star Trek works.
Let's assume, I'm going under the assumption that phasers have some form of superheated plasma involved. And in that case, probably. Right? If it's some weird form of, like, extra-dimensional energy, then I don't know. Because I know they can be set to stun.
Phasers release a beam of fictional subatomic particles called rapid nadion, which are then refracted through superconducting crystals. So it does appear that it's firing radioactive particles. I'm gonna say yeah.
Well, in that case, it sounds like you're turning a Wendigo into Godzilla.
Yeah.
Is there radiation poisoning from phasers in Star Trek? Is that a thing they discussed?
I think the idea with them is that they kill you through
immediate radiation sickness?
No, through burning. Like, I don't know. I never watched that much. I watched Next Generation a little bit when I was younger, but I mean they're used as rifles and as anti-ship cannons. So I assume it would kill you one of two ways. Either it would cook you alive, in which case yes, you could use it against a Wendigo, or it would be the force of the particles hitting you would cause a shockwave that would kill you, in which case I don't think it would kill a Wendigo.
Oh, so kind of like a...
So if it kills you by superheating your organs, yes.
Yes.
If it kills you through trauma, no.
So thermal, yes. Kinetic, no.
Yes.
Okay, and his secondary question...
Although if you hit something with enough kinetic energy, it does become thermal.
There is a
You
certain
can
speed
slap a
which you
chicken
slap
hard enough.
Yes. Oh, I want to see that in a Superman comic. Because if there's anybody that can do it, it's him. Anyway, so his second question was, how much meth would it take to OD a fleshy boy?
Dude, I don't know. The Germans gave a lot of meth to their soldiers. There's a story of God, I think he was a Finnish soldier fighting for the Germans. Or no. I think it was a Finnish soldier fighting for the Germans during World War II who, when they were out on patrol, they gave all soldiers in the German military meth-laced chocolate, and you were supposed to eat like one bar, or not one bar, but like one piece of a bar. And he got separated from his unit. He was tired. He needed to find them, and he didn't have any other food, so he was like, he didn't know how much of the bar to eat, so he ate the whole bar. And apparently he was awake for like 6 days and just kept going. And eventually they found him.
I'm surprised he didn't just immediately overdose.
It's surprising he didn't die, but if you could... I mean, if a human can take that much meth... But that was also ingested. It was also medically dosed. Like, I don't know. So,
but that's the thing is,
how would you administer the meth to a fleshy boy?
My assumption is it would be kind of like a tranq dart gun. Like, that
sounds
like the easiest way to do it without dying. That's assuming that its skin can be penetrated.
I don't know I don't know how to dose meth.
For anybody who knows how to dose meth out there, give us an answer.
Yeah, but again, given that the lore suggests they can only be killed with fire, or in some cases white ash, I would say meth probably would not kill them.
Probably not.
I mean, if you gave a Wendigo a human's lethal dose of meth, it would probably just make it even more dangerous.
Yep. Kind of like
Wendigos on meth would be a sick sci-fi daytime film.
Okay, next question. From Soupy Games, Aiden's, what is the superior candy?
Candy?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid on Halloween, I would always go for the Kit Kats. I would always trade for more Kit Kats.
Okay. Solid.
What about you?
That. It rotates for me, to be honest with you. The first thing that comes to mind was Three Musketeers back before they changed the formula. I don't know when exactly they did it. And it might be the nostalgia factor, because between 6th and 8th grade, like, my whole middle school would go, and some of the high school, would go to this ice skating rink in my town, and there'd be like 300 kids on the ice, and I would like skate around with a couple of friends of mine and just act silly. It was fun, but there'd be like a halftime in the night where like they'd turn the lights back on and the music like down, so everybody would like go get off the ice so they could clean it, and there was like a snack place upstairs, and I just remember every Friday I'd get a Sprite and a Three Musketeers. I mean, because like it took too long to get like the fries and stuff like that. I just wanted it now, and they were great. But then like 7th or 8th grade, they changed the formula of the Three Musketeers so that filling stuff had like more chocolate in the mixture, and it was just like too much chocolate. It just wasn't a good balance anymore, because the exterior chocolate coating balanced out the flavor of the like whatever that is in the middle. I don't know. The nougat in the middle. So that's...
I think it's nougat.
Probably. So I still enjoy Three Musketeers, but back when they were more balanced, I liked them more. But yeah.
Too many Musketeers now.
Oh, here we go. Oh, Brendan Midkiff is about to... He's trying to end our friendship right now.
Okay.
Who is the better Aiden? I want you to both to debate.
Better at being an Aiden?
I think it's just...
Or just better?
Just better.
Well, I'm taller.
This is a fact. I'm 5'6", he's 5'9". You are currently stronger.
I bench more.
Yes, at the moment.
Let's see. I think I was the last to have any sort of relationship with our mutual ex-girlfriend.
Define any form of relationship.
Any form of relationship. This is a family-friendly show.
Fair. Yeah, probably, because y'all were in much closer
together.
proximity. Yeah.
we.
And when he says "our," we don't mean at the same time.
No,
I dated her, and then he dated her.
And then I dated her. He dated her. I dated her. He dated her. I dated her. He dated her.
No, not that many.
Was it not that many?
No, I dated her. Then
she's probably watching the show too.
Yeah. Hi.
Sorry, we won't say your name.
Yeah, no, we won't. I dated her for like I think about on and off for 2 years, and then they dated, and then she and I tried again. It just didn't really work, and then I guess you guys dated again. I didn't know you guys dated again after that.
There was a period in college where it was considered and didn't. Yeah, it was a long story. But let's see. I have like 3 points on you here.
I think I've been in more long-term relationships. All of my long-term relationships have lasted longer than your relationships.
Wow. Ouch. Let's see. I have 475,000 TikTok followers.
You do. I have not tried on TikTok.
I can read.
Fuck, he got me. All right, we've decided it. He is the...
I'm older than you two.
Yes, you are. I think he's got all the points at this point. Oh, I have a boating license.
Ah, damn. That. See, that's better because of the implication.
Yeah. It's the fun little options. Oh, well, I'll give you one here. he lives out like on his own.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Like this is his apartment. I'm still at home at the moment. So I think that brings me on like 2 notches, to be honest with you.
You built your own guitar.
I did.
That was cool.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I can't do that. You're also better at playing guitar than I am.
But you're a better singer than I am.
Yeah, that's fair.
I love how this just went from so Brendan tried to get us to debate
now
which one was better.
Each other.
Yeah, now we're giving each other points. This is our friendship essentially. It's like no.
You do have a thick, juicy ass.
Yeah, but so do you.
Good point.
Yeah, I'll give it's a tie on that one.
Just wagon train over here.
Just absolute dump truck over there. This is only adding to the shit.
You have only made us stronger, Brendan.
Yes.
All right,
you can
what's
try
next?
to separate us, but there's nothing that we haven't gone through already. Okay. Aviva Jane, this looks like a legitimate question. Why are the fleshy ones so afraid of dogs? And question 2, what are y'all's favorite bad sci-fi movie and only bad ones minus Tremors? You stole mine, Aviva! I love Tremors so much. It's such a good... Have you seen it?
I don't think so.
Or we're going to watch it together at
but
some
I can
point.
very easily tell you my favorite bad sci-fi movie.
Please do.
It is FDR, American Badass.
I've not even heard of that
It's
one.
on Amazon Prime. And it is a movie where FDR fights Nazi werewolves.
Oh, what's it rated?
I don't remember. It's terrible. It's like SNL quality.
Okay, Pep, Jiv, anybody, Alex, anybody who are the mods in there, do me a favor. Look and see what the rating is on that movie. Or like if it's R, as long as there's not like, let me know if it's viable to watch in the Discord. Because if it is, I want to with everybody because that sounds hilarious. Anyway.
Ooh, also Rubber. Have you seen Rubber?
I haven't.
You gotta see Rubber.
All right, so we're going to do Rubber if that's viable. Tremors is definitely viable. We're definitely watching that. Might save that for more around Halloween time because, it's just, it's great. I love Tremors with a passion. It stars Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, I think. The guy who plays the dad on Family Matters, I think that's the show, is just like this all-American. Like, there's literally a scene in which a monster gets in their basement and it pans to a wall of guns. And they just go one after another, and they just do their best to get rid of it. It's hilarious. Anyway, so the legitimate question she asked first was, why are fleshy ones so afraid of dogs?
I don't know where you got that information, but it's not true.
I was going to say, that didn't sound familiar.
It's not. They're not. They're not afraid of dogs. I don't know who told you that.
Okay, next question is... Oh, slid me down. I gotta scroll back up. Where... Hang on, sorry. Oh, do you think that a Nephilim that turned into a god, in quotes, died and went to another world? Ooh.
It's a very vague question.
Yeah, I feel like you can go pretty much anywhere with that.
I think if you were to have a Nephilim die, given that they are half human, they would probably be subject to. They would have a human soul, which would mean they would be subject to the same kind of afterlife as other human beings, I would say. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what tradition you're looking at. If you're looking at Judeo-Christian, then Nephilim that died would probably go to heaven or hell, or whatever. The Jewish afterlife system is a bit different than the Christian. It's a lot less defined, and the Jewish negative afterlife is more nothingness than it is eternal hellfire, whereas the Jewish positive afterlife is more like, I guess, kind of the fields of Elysium in Greek mythology. Whereas even heaven is, so when you get into Christian heaven, it's described as being indescribable. So, yeah, I think it really depends on what tradition you go with. But if you were to have, is using Nephilim specifically because they are Judeo-Christian, I think that you would probably see them having the same afterlife potential as human beings, considering that there isn't really any suggestion of an afterlife for angels that die. So yeah, I think that's my answer. Is they would probably go to heaven or hell.
Okay. All right. So the next question is from Derek Herman because he super chatted $4.99. Thank you very
Derek.
much. He says FDR American Badass is great, and then his question was, would night vision help with hunting fleshy boys?
I mean, to the same extent it would help with hunting any human being, or any animal. It's going to make it easier for you to see. I wouldn't suggest hunting fleshy boys though. But yeah, I mean, it's not like they're going to be invisible to night vision. So it's going to help to the extent that anything can help.
Fair. All right, so Commander Canada 213 did another super chat of $5, and he is asking, I think for clarification, because I can't remember if it was him last time, but I think it's just because people are curious. Is it possible to get a fleshy girl as a girlfriend because you can get a muzzle and gloves? Also, who said it's sexual? So I think he's clarifying the sense that he doesn't necessarily mean that it's for anything sexual. He just wants to know if you can get a fleshy girl as a girlfriend.
The answer is still no. It's going to eat you.
It's not the same thing as like a Twitch streamer with cat ears on her headphones.
Yeah, we're not talking about like a Discord kitten here. We're talking about a, supernatural apex predator that wants to devour your flesh.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you're into that, I guess you could define that relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend.
I feel like there has to be a sense of mutual, like, consent in that.
Yeah, I don't think that the flesh pedestrian would consider you its boyfriend.
Yeah, like, I feel like you have to establish mutually that you look at each other as boyfriend and girlfriend first, and I don't think you can do that with a being that's incapable of expressing that.
I think what you're expressing interest in is a waifu.
Although I guess if it can mimic human voices, does it have the capability of speaking language intelligently? Beyond this whole question of girlfriend and boyfriend stuff, but like just genuinely, like, do you think they have the capacity to speak English or any language?
I think it's more like I think the idea behind it is that they have their mental faculties have degraded over millennia to the point where they no longer are capable of forming coherent thoughts, but they can mimic voices.
So my question
So
on
it's more
that,
like
though,
a parrot.
So my question on that, though, so would they have to hear that voice first? So essentially, when
they have to hear that voice first.
So when they take somebody, they're essentially only mimicking the things that person said while being
or
taken.
Or perhaps in some, you could theorize that if it has been particularly successful in hunting, then it has not only learned how to mimic voices, but might have also learned to mimic phrases that it knows works. But it wouldn't be like the way we use language. It would be that it knows, it might have heard one person say one phrase, and then it might repeat that phrase in another person's voice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it wouldn't necessarily, be able to say, "Hi, I need to use the bathroom," because it needs to use the bathroom. You get the point. You get what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Okay, so the next question is from Kat Rose, who super chatted $5. Thank you very much, Kat. She says, "Hi there, I asked a question a little further up about mirror lore through the various cultures, and what are your thoughts on them? By the way, loving the podcast." With a big smiley face. Thank you. Yeah,
so mirrors are often seen as being gateways to other dimensions in certain cases. For example, there's a lot of suggestions in a lot of folklore that if you have two mirrors face each other, then it creates a portal for demons to come through. So if you've ever been to a mall, like a changing room, probably not a good place to be if you're afraid of demons. But yeah, I think to a large extent that probably comes from a more psychological place rather than an actual supernatural occurrence. Because there is something a little uncanny about looking at your reflection. And the fact that it is not, if you raise your right hand in a mirror, then you're going to see what appears to be your left hand raising. So it does look like it's kind of an alternate dimension, and I think that just over time people were very superstitious. We had the same superstitions about photographs capturing your soul. So I think it's definitely very interesting, but I don't think that it's quite in the same realm as a lot of the other stuff we're talking about here. But yeah, I mean, if I can definitely do some more research into some specifics about various cultures and what they have believed in the past about mirrors. But the general idea was that mirrors were a gateway into another world, another dimension, often a dimension where things were not very good, and that if you just were looking into a mirror, it generally isn't that big a deal. But if you have two mirrors facing each other, then you're asking for trouble, because you're creating a way for the whatever is in the mirror to get out, essentially.
Interesting.
But there's also a lot of mirror lore that is about specific things, like Bloody Mary. If you say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times, then supposedly she can come out of the mirror and attack you. So there's also the thought that mirrors can be used to contain spirits as well as to summon them.
Solid. All right, so just going down, continuing in chronological order, because I had to scroll up. I'm not exactly sure where I am. But just so you guys know, we're approaching 8:30. We might go a little over 8:30, but not much longer.
8:30 is probably going to be
it's about where we'll end it. We might go a couple minutes over, but that'll be pretty much the cutoff. So if we haven't, I go in chronological order of the questions asked. So if we haven't seen yours yet and you really want it to be answered, super chat it to us. That always gets priority. So we'll go for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap it. And then real quick, just for people to know, will we be in general, campfire, or cabin today?
Let's do general.
Okay. So then after this, we'll be in the general voice chat of the Discord for about a half hour or so. So you can catch us there, but we will continue to answer whatever questions are left within the time that we have. So we have another one from Cat Rose, super chat of $5. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more. As time seems to be more of a construct, thoughts on past lives, predestined outcomes, and etc.
Oh boy. So yeah, that's just getting to a point where you're talking about religion to a large extent. Here's my issue with past lives is that there are far too many people now to adequately account for for reincarnation. Unless you had some sort, because more people are born than die, which would imply then that are there currently more people who have died in human history than who are currently alive?
Is that true?
That's what I'm saying. More people are born than die. That is a fact. So,
but they eventually die.
They eventually die, but for every person that's born, that another person, 1.15 people are born. For a person that dies. But my point is, we're rapidly accelerating to a point where we're going to have more people born. There will be more people who have been born than have died, which would make it impossible for everyone on Earth to have lived a past life.
Yeah, there would have to be new.
There would have to be new consciousnesses. If there can be new consciousness, then how often does that happen as opposed to reincarnation, and why, and what would the purpose of that be? Yeah. So I lean towards the side of there's not reincarnation, that there's not that every consciousness is a new consciousness, that every soul is a new soul. At least personally, but what was the other half of the question? It was
the thoughts on thoughts on past lives, predestined outcomes.
Oh, yeah. So, and predestination, I just think predestination, it really depends on how you're defining it. If you were to create a computer program that had all of the data, say in 2 minutes, you launched a computer program that knew everything that had ever happened up until 2 minutes from now, it could probably accurately predict the rest of the future, if it were sufficiently powerful. A sufficiently powerful AI could take the information we already have and use it to perfectly predict the future. I don't think that's the same as predestination. I think predestination is that the computer programmed the future, not that the computer predicted the future. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important difference. I don't think it's purely semantic, and I think that if you go into there are a lot of cultures that didn't believe in predestination at all. That and that you could actually change your outcomes. There were some that did. For example, the Greeks had the Fates, the Norse had the Norns, but there are plenty of cultures that believed that you could learn your fate and then actively work to change it. There were those who believed that by actively working to change it, you would actually self-fulfill. So I think that to an extent, it really depends. If you believe in the idea that future outcomes can be predicted, sure. But I don't think that there is some consciousness out there deciding now, deciding when someone is born, what the outcome of their life will be. I think if you look at it from a creationist standpoint, that's pointless. Why would you create? What would be the interest of creating a world where you already know what's going to happen, or you have planned what's going to happen? That's kind of the Calvinist look at it is, from the moment you're born, God knows when you're going to die. He knows everything you're going to do in your life, and he, that it is what it is. I don't think that makes a ton of sense. As a Methodist, I look at it as God is all knowing and God is all powerful, but God has also granted humans free will, and therefore we can perhaps sometimes surprise him. I believe that, in my case, I believe that the Creator knows the way we're going to, knows the end, and that there's a plan, but that we can veer off of that plan. And us veering off of that plan would then affect other people, and I believe he has the power and the knowledge to course correct if he wants. But I think that in my particular faith, I believe that God created the world. He has a plan for everybody. But at the same time, there is Satan, and Satan's job is to get you off of that plan. Because God's plan for everybody, when you're born, is that you will come into the fold and eventually, find faith, find grace, and be admitted into heaven. And Satan's whole goal is to stop that, is to get you off that path. So not to get too preachy, that's just my particular religious beliefs is that God's plan for everybody is that everyone will be redeemed and go to heaven. But that he gave human beings free will, and that we can therefore fall off of that plan. And it's our responsibility as human beings with one another to help each other get back onto the path. And whether you believe in God or the Christian God or another God or several gods, I do think that's a good way to live your life. Either way is, if you see somebody falling off of the righteous, the virtuous, moral path, it is good to try and be a resource to help them get back on track. And I don't necessarily mean that as in, if you have different morals from somebody, you should force them to conform to yours. But if you see somebody falling into, say, alcoholism, then it is your responsibility as a person to be there and try and help them get back on their feet and get back to a good path in life. So I hope that didn't get too preachy, but
I think you're fine.
Yeah, that's my answer to that.
All right, so we have one more super chat, and it is 8:33, so this will probably be our last question. Super chat is from Sega for $4.99. Thank you very much, Sega.
Thank you, Sega.
He says, loving the podcast. Thoughts on the stoned ape theory?
The stoned ape theory?
Yes.
I got to look that up really quickly to make sure I am thinking about the correct thing.
I feel like there's like 3 different ways that could go.
This is exactly what I thought it was. Okay.
So what is it?
Yeah, so in very short, stoned ape theory, Terence McKenna, the idea that psilocybin mushrooms were the evolutionary catalyst for human consciousness, that whatever the precursor to humans was from an evolutionary standpoint, it was their consumption of magic mushrooms that led them to develop a higher consciousness and made them more intelligent, and therefore it allowed for the most intelligent ones to evolve more successfully and breed more successfully, and that's how you got higher consciousness, how you got sentience, was through the use of magic mushrooms. So stoned apes are what created consciousness. I think if you're an evolutionary biologist and you don't believe in any sort of divine intervention, that's probably your best bet for a way to look at it.
Well, in a sense, that event occurring could be a example of divine intervention.
It could be, but here's where I'm looking at it. And it falls back into something that I talked about in one of my TikTok videos. Human beings naturally produce DMT. It could be that we're the only primates that do that, or the only primates that do that in enough of a dose for it to matter. And there is the suggestion that when Moses was speaking to the burning bush, speaking to God, the bush was an acacia bush, and acacia is naturally rich in DMT, so he was inhaling just obscene amounts of DMT, which allowed him to speak to God. And a lot of secular biblical historians view that as, it was the DMT. Moses was speaking to himself through the DMT, or whatever the DMT hallucination was. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, no, the DMT was the vector by which he spoke to God. So, in a sense, yeah, I'm all on board with the stoned ape theory. It's just, I think that I think it was within us, not that they started eating the mushrooms and that made them sentient. I think that God put the DMT in us so we could communicate with him. And that's why when people smoke DMT, they have experiences with higher beings and divinity and stuff like that. But if you were an evolutionary biologist, I think that does make the most sense as to why one series of primates specifically managed to develop that higher consciousness would be because of the use of psilocybin. It answers a lot of questions. Obviously yet to be proven, but I think it's the theory that makes the most sense, because the other theory is just, well, it worked for one. Eventually we had a mutation. And I just, there's so much randomness involved in that it does make sense that, if you had a clan of whatever, I can't remember what directly preceded Homo sapiens, because there's two Homo sapiens. There's Homo sapiens neanderthalis and Homo sapiens sapiens. So whatever was before Homo sapiens, whatever the common ancestor was that would have to be the one.
I believe first was Homo erectus, then there was Homo habilis. I'm not sure of the direct lineage, or if there was something between.
But those weren't
habilis.
Homo sapiens, I don't think.
They were not. They weren't Homo sapiens. They were what preceded Homo sapiens. I believe Homo erectus was first, and then Homo habilis came after Homo erectus. Because I believe Homo habilis was the first thing to use tools, if I'm remembering correctly, which I may not be.
Yeah, but you also got to remember, this isn't a linear thing.
No, I know.
Homo erectus was not pre-Homo sapiens, supposedly.
I believe it was.
I don't think that they were... I don't think that they came before, but I don't think that they were a direct ancestor.
Okay, gotcha.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm speaking purely chronological,
let's see,
not necessarily biological.
It goes Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, Homo erectus.
Okay, I had them flipped.
Heidelbergensis. This is 500,000 years ago. 400,000 years, early humans begin to hunt with spears. Oldest surviving early human footprints are left by three people who scrambled down the slopes of a volcano in Italy in 325,000 years ago. 230,000 years ago, Neanderthals. Our own species, Homo sapiens. But what genus? Homo sapiens Neanderthalensis. What is the... what's the taxonomy there? Neanderthals are hominids in the genus Homo and generally classified as distinct species. Homo or Neanderthal, some species as Homo sapiens. So it's the species level is sapiens.
Yeah. Genus would be Homo.
So whatever would have been. What's between genus and species again?
Nothing.
Nothing's between genus and species?
Nope. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The genus is Homo, the species is sapien.
So it would have to be the genus Homo, where the use of psilocybin would have had to come into it.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense because it is only the Homo genus that uses tools.
Well, it used to be.
Used to be.
Now, what specific?
It's chimpanzees.
Yeah, chimps have now entered the Stone Age.
Yeah, theoretically, there's evidence that chimps have entered the Stone Age. But yeah, I mean, just to answer the question, I think if you're going to look at it from the standpoint of an evolutionary biologist, from a scientific standpoint, I think that the Stone Age theory that the psilocybin consumption makes a lot of sense. I think it would be hard to test it because you would basically have to take a bunch of chimps and feed them psilocybin for several generations. And I think that would just go really badly. I don't think there's any instance in which making chimps more intelligent is a good plan for humanity.
I feel like there's a few movies about that.
I really do feel like it.
Yeah.
But it definitely would account for the sudden change and the fact that one genus then went and just exploded into intelligence by comparison.
Yeah.
Because, even an upgrade from probably like, the 50 IQ that a Australopithecus might have to, the 80, 85 that a Homo erectus might have is massive. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's a viable theory. On the one hand, I would love to see it tested.
Yeah.
I would love to see what happened if you gave chimpanzees, if you isolated a group of chimpanzees and fed them magic mushrooms every day for like 3 generations. I want to know if by the end of that they would be smarter.
The only retort I have to that is to quote a well-known chaostician. You were so preoccupied with whether or not you could.
Exactly. That's why I say I'm not sure. Like on the one hand, I think that would be a really cool experiment. On the other hand, I feel like that would be a really bad idea.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, it is 8:42.
Yeah. So, but that answers that. I think that sufficiently answers that question.
I think that more than sufficiently answers that question.
All right. Oh boy.
Today was a very dense.
Covered a lot of topics today.
Podcast.
It's a very scientific podcast.
It was very technical and theoretical, and if we haven't proven that we at least know something, I'm not sure what else you need.
All right. Are there any more super chats?
No,
okay.
That was it.
All right. Well, then in that case, I'm just gonna kind of round off the show here. Make sure to follow Aiden and myself at the Aidan Mattis and Director Aiden on pretty much whatever platform you feel like.
Yeah, anything worth following us on, that's where you'll find us.
If you like our podcast, if you like our YouTube videos, if you like our story time, any of that, the most important thing you can do is share. That share function really just boosts the algorithm more than you know. So share this with your friends, share it with your parents, share it with your ex-girlfriend. In fact, share it with your ex-girlfriend constantly. Just just bug the hell out of your ex-girlfriend.
Share it with your Wendigo girlfriend if
exactly. Just harass people with this podcast
over and over again until they fully understand that it's worth watching.
Yeah. Or at least share it on Facebook or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you still use Facebook, share us on MySpace.
Yeah, we are on MySpace.
We're not on MySpace.
You can find the podcast now on Napster.
Yeah. Uh, if you go to, I think you put it in the description, right?
Yes.
The aidenmattis.card. So if you click on that link in the description, aidenmattis.card.co, that is kind of our new Linktree, because Linktree got mad at me and told me I was abusing their terms of service and then didn't tell me why. So we built a new one. But anyway, on that, you can find our Patreon, our merch store, Instagram, the Lore Lodge email, all that if you want to get in contact with us. If you have your own paranormal experiences you would like shared as part of story time, or you would like our opinion on them, go ahead and shoot those over to us at that email address. If you want to support us, help us pay rent, follow us on Patreon. There's, again, tiers from $1 through $25. At the end of this month, the $25 patrons from this month will get their Lore Master shirts sent out once that first cycle goes through. And I do encourage everybody to go check out the merch store. One of my good friends, Norman Keys, designed the Lore Lodge logo. It's that skull with the cabin on it. So shout out to him for that help, because that was awesome.
Yeah, it was sweet. And we have more designs and more merch coming soon.
Of course, yeah. And we're gonna take a brief break, and then we will hop into the Discord. Oh, the Discord link is also in that card thing.
Linktree,
yeah. So,
do you want to say 9? We'll try and be there by 9.
Yeah, we'll try and be in the Discord by 9.
Yep.
All right. Once again, I'm Aidan Mattis.
I'm Aidan Thornberry.
And thanks for stopping by the Lore Lodge.
We'll see you next time.